This program is brought to you by Connie Doto of Connie Doto Realty Group, 119 Pleasant Street, Methuen. When you want results, don't make a move without us.
Welcome to Doto Real Estate View. As many of you know, our viewers request different topics. One of the topics that people have asked for is to understand the building process when they're building a home. And we have Morris Caruso here, who's been generous enough to give us his expertise from MJC Development. Thank you, Morris, for coming.
Thank you for having me, Connie.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you calling.
I have to say, Morris has been a builder for 25 years, in particular in Merrimack Valley and southern New Hampshire and New Hampshire. He does, his expertise it expands from basic building to large home building, from real specialty building. One thing that people always ask is, how do I select a good builder?
Well, I think the most important thing would be references. If you could speak to the builder and ask him or her for references of people that they built for in the past, that's usually the most important thing, because you want a builder that you can work with, that's willing to work with you and willing to listen to what you want. Also, you want the builder to be licensed. In Massachusetts, there is a licensing process. And also insurance. You want to make sure that they're insured.
Is there a licensing process in Mass as well?
Well, in Mass there's a process, but not New Hampshire. New Hampshire does not have a license for builders, believe it or not. Oh. And that's where references would be very important.
And I know, working with people, they always ask, how do I build, you know, as you say, select a builder? And we always say, exactly what you say, ask for references or go see what they've built. If people are fortunate enough to get into homes that people have built, that builders have built, that gives them a good reference point to see the type of construction.
That's right, and I think depending on the price range, if the builder is built in different price ranges, you want to see a house in that range. You don't want to be, if you're building a house that's $300,000, you don't want to be going into $1 million house. I mean, you could go into the $1 million, but you don't want to. It'd be nice to see one that's in that $300,000, $400,000 range, or even $200,000 range.
Right. What I know, I have to say, and I let the public know as well, I work with a lot of different people, different builders, but I selected you to build my home, which is, you know, says something, being in the business, and kudos to you for, you know, being selected to do that. That really speaks to your ability and your skills. You do tremendous work, you know, as I have seen by my own home and homes that you've built that I've sold. But what would you say is your specialty in new construction?
I've built, and I do, at this point right now, I'm building a house that's $200,000. I've also built custom homes in the last 6 months that were $1 million. I'm doing a house right now at Seabrook Beach that's about the $700,000 range, and I also have condominiums that are in the $300,000 range. So I actually can do the ultra custom, which I've done, as well as a spec home that has no custom involvement, and the house is completed, and then they buy and move in.
What do you enjoy the most? What type of home do you like to build?
That's tough. I enjoy doing the custom. That's a lot of fun, as long as you have a clear understanding as to where you're going, and you understand where the customer wants to go and how much they want to spend. And you try to keep them in that budget. So I enjoy working with people. So I actually enjoyed that end of the market.
And you do it well. I mean, both ends of the spectrum. Like I said, I've seen you with the 200 and up to over the million. You certainly do the job well. What would you say is the most common house that you've built over your career? Which I know is difficult, or we can take it from your career and right now. What's the common house that people want?
Well, it depends. The most common house is the colonial. Being in New England, the colonial is a popular house, especially for young families, first-time buyers, and move-up buyers, but with families. But I've seen also a lot of demand for single-floor designs or houses that have the master bedroom, particularly on the first floor, then maybe 2 bedrooms on the second floor, or all the bedrooms on the first floor. Those are move-up buyers, empty nesters, people that want a new home, but want to have their master on one floor, or they're living all on one floor. So that seems to be the trend, and seems to be a little more popular.
What would you say is one of the upgrades that people really sink their teeth in?
People like hardwood floors. I would say hardwood floors. At one time, it used to be granite countertops, but that's almost become a standard now, granite countertops. So I think hardwood flooring seems to be probably the #1 choice in upgrades at this point.
What would you say one thing that people should consider when they're looking at new construction or existing homes?
Well, for new construction, my experience has been that new construction is going to be more expensive than an existing home. However, with new construction, you would hope that you have 15 to 20 years of no major improvements. You'll have minor maintenance, but you shouldn't be replacing roofs. You shouldn't be replacing heating systems, things like that. The plumbing, all those things should be pretty solid for at least 20 years. And so septic systems, all those type of things. Whereas if you buy an existing home, depending on the age of the home, if you buy a house that's 20 years old, if those things haven't been done, you'll be doing them soon. So those are the things, and I find there's a lot of people that, empty nesters, that are choosing to buy new construction because they're getting rid of their houses that are 25, 30 years old, and they want to buy something that they don't have to deal with anything for the next 20 years. So we're seeing that's
More the trend.
Yeah, more the trend.
And I think, in real estate, we're seeing the same thing. A lot of people are saying, okay, I'm moving to my, like you said, empty nesters. I want their first floor master, and I don't need the 4 bedrooms anymore.
Right.
The children are all gone, so I need to have more of the one level. Looking at a colonial versus a ranch, the one level living, cost-wise, I know there's cost associated with the two, that it varies.
Yes, it costs more to build a ranch per square foot than it does a colonial.
Right.
And that's because you have, roofing is very expensive, foundations are expensive. If you have a colonial and you have 3,000 square feet or 2,000 square feet, there's going to be 1,000 feet per floor. And so you have 1,000 feet or in around 1,000 feet of roofing and foundation and concrete. Whereas when you get into a ranch, if it's 2,000 square feet, you're going to have double that. So you're going to have double the cost for the roofing, double the cost for the foundation. So proportionally, it is more expensive to build a ranch than it is to build.
And you need more land.
And you need more land. That's correct.
You need that frontage, so that's going to change it too.
That's right. And depending on the size ranch you want, there are limited lots. And sometimes the mistake people make is they open these books that they buy that show house plans, and they look and say, well, that's beautiful, and it's a ranch and it's spread out. But to find, when you look at the footprint of that house, it may be 70 or 80 feet long by 60 feet wide. We don't have many lots that house would work on, unless it's a big field on 2 acres or 1.5 acres. But on your small lots, that's why you'll see more colonials being built. Because if you want the square footage, you need to, sometimes you need to go to the second floor.
Right. And another attraction that people like too is the attached garage versus under.
Yes, attached garage versus garage under. Garage under costs less, but attached garage by far is more desirable, and it costs more to buy.
Right.
But when you have to bring those groceries in and you're doing the stairs opposed to going up 4 stairs, you're going up a full set. After a while, it gets taxing.
Right, right.
The
And
kids don't want to do it anymore.
that's right, and we're not getting under, we go up in
right,
age and
right.
everything. So what would you say is the difference between going into an existing subdivision with his houses established and somebody selling homes versus a spot lot?
The subdivision is going to cost more to get into. It's going to cost more to buy the lot.
Right.
And it's going to cost more, obviously, to buy the house, the final product, because of the lot cost. Some people, depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for a neighborhood, if you have a young family and it's a young neighborhood, and people want to be in a subdivision. They want the kids to ride in the street with the bicycles, and they want that neighborhood feel. But I've also done spot lots where I find buyers that love the fact that it's a spot lot because they're either past that stage or they're not going to have children, and they can spend a little bit less. And they may be on either a busier street or an older neighborhood, and they're very happy with that to save a couple of dollars and have the same house. So,
I think you're right. I mean, that's what we typically would see. Younger people that are establishing themselves at the beginning, their first home with, starting a family, they like the subdivision, but the spot lots work for others as well.
right.
So that's good. Do you think, in terms of building, if you have a subdivision or spot lots, as you say, people have different things that they're going to pick out, which is more difficult for you as a builder
To
work with customers?
well, when you do a subdivision, typically what you do is you put a marketing package together with your realtor, and they have open houses, and they pass out brochures, and in these brochures they have choices,
Selections.
and they
Yep.
make choices for flooring, colors, cabinets, from soup to nuts, from the beginning to the end, depending on where they get in, what stage they get into the project. They also can pick their lot and things like that. When you have a spot lot, the house is pretty much what the house is, depending on where you get in on the purchasing end. Is it at the beginning of the lot, at the beginning of the building process? Is it towards the end? You usually have less choices that you can make.
The point you made is very important to me. Do you think it's obviously better to have a real estate agent involved in the whole new construction, whether it's a subdivision or a spot lot?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I always use a real estate agent as a seller. Some builders may put a sign up and try to sell it themselves, but I always use a real estate agent. And I think a buyer should use a real estate agent because in covering themselves, the agent understands the construction process, understands the questions to ask, understands, and it can explain to you, and especially if you're going out and making selections and choices, the builder doesn't have the time to go and do that with you. And it can be frustrating for the buyer as well as the builder if it's there's a direct connection there. Where the broker acts as a buffer in between, the broker does all that legwork and gets those things done, and the builder's happy and the buyer's happy.
Right. And again, we see a lot of people, whether they want to come in, they say, I have a lot, I'm thinking of selling it or building on it myself. Eventually they'll come around to the agent, to one of the agents in the office, say, okay, list it for me, let's come up with, as you said, a marketing packet to come up with the sequence of steps. You don't have the time to sit down and say, okay, now you need to go out and select your windows. Now you need to go out and select your cabinets and go through the process. So I think that's very important because we do have people that like to try to do it on their own.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes what happens is people will leave money on the table.
Oh, definitely.
That they won't get as much as they could have if they didn't have a real estate,
Correct.
have
Yeah,
an agent
no doubt.
there. So.
No doubt about it.
Again, in terms of looking at new construction, let's take an example. I think it's better to look at that because I think it's going to vary depending on the home that's built. Let's take a colonial, 8 rooms, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. Say it's February. What's the process and how long would it take would you think?
A house like that, if all the selections are chosen, and it's February, and let's not say it's February.
Okay.
Let's say it's the middle of March.
Okay,
The snow is melting.
Yep.
It's a little wet, but it's drying up. We start pulling permits. By the end of March, we can start construction. If that's a go, it's the best time of the year because the days are longer. People are ready and anxious to go. At that point, if all the selections are made and the lot is not an issue with ledge or anything like that, it'd probably take about 4 months to complete that house. If you're at a different time of the year, if you're in October and you're running into the winter, or you're starting in November, it could run up to 5 or 6 months. And again, that's with all things being chosen. A lot of times people make changes or things aren't decided. And if, for example, I had one customer that decided they wanted cherry flooring, and they decided they wanted the cherry flooring.
go ahead, continue.
Okay. Just before the 4th of July. Well, we had to get the cherry flooring from Kentucky, and they said it was 2 weeks, but because it was the 4th of July, it was 3 weeks.
Right.
But so if previous to that, it was going to be birch. If we stuck with the birch, that was in stock. So it wasn't a problem, it wasn't an issue. I had no problem with it as long as the homeowner understood that we were going to lose a little time. And they had no problem with that. They had no problem. They were very comfortable where they were living. They had no issues in how long they could stay there. And so we put the cherry in, and everybody was happy.
And the reason why I'm laughing, because that was me. That's the reason why I'm laughing. And understanding, as you said, I mean, as long as the customer understands.
That's right.
And then the timing, the other issue that we got into was the temperature.
Right.
I mean, because
yeah,
it was
definitely,
a very humid summer.
It was humid, and
so
the floors
took
swelled a little
right,
bit.
Right.
And so, all those things come into play. Fortunately, in that situation, we hadn't ordered the previous wood.
Right.
We hadn't put a deposit on it. So it wasn't a question of any financial cost other than losing a little bit of time.
And again, a lot of builders, I mean, will ask every time there's a change.
There are some builders that ask every time there's a change before you even start discussing the cost, a $250 charge, just to sit down and start pricing out the change. So that's
one thing I have to say. But you know what? I mean, I have to say, you don't do that in all the construction that I've dealt with.